Thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. I apologize in advance. I've got a little bit of cold, so there will be a little bit of coughing here and there. Hope everyone had a great lunch. So thanks for the introduction, Jamil. Jamil, as he just indicated, we work together at Funzio. And just a quick recap of my background before I jump into the presentation. I've had social networking experience at Hi5, which was at that time was the third largest social network. In my last year over there, I led the transformation of the website from just a pure social network to a destination gaming portal, and then saw the rise of the iOS platform and founded a company that became one of the earliest pioneers in social mobile gaming, Storm8. So I was there, saw the launch of about 8 titles, all text-based RPGs that we brought for the first time to the iOS mobile gaming market. But there were a couple of things that troubled me. One was our dependence on a single platform at that time, and our belief that if we wanted to be a sustainable long-term business, we really wanted to be on multiple platforms. Wherever the players were, we wanted to engage with them, we wanted to retain them. We wanted to introduce games for them that would really be of the highest quality, better than any of our competition. So that was one, because we were so insularly focused on just one platform. I didn't like that. The second thing was we saw that the quality bar of the games, social games at that time, was just starting to increase at a rapid pace, both on Facebook as well as on mobile gaming. Text-based RPGs were no longer popular on Facebook, and we knew that trend would follow pretty soon on mobile gaming. So that was the genesis of Funzio. We did that for about 2.5 years, created 3 titles: Crime City, Modern War, Kingdom Age. Recently got acquired by GREE for about $210 million. Crime City, incidentally, will have its first year anniversary in August since its launch on iOS. We still continue to retain our users. Month over month, the property keeps outperforming, and just last month was its highest revenue till date. So we have 3 of the top grossing games in the top 50 on the iOS. With that, let me just give you a very quick overview of a company that we are now part of, GREE. It's just under 3 months. The integration is going really well. If you look at our apps on the iOS store, you will see all 3 apps now have the GREE logo in them, so integration is going as planned. Also, GREE has been in business since 2004, based out of Tokyo in Japan, and we are part of an entity that's called GREE International, which is headquartered in San Francisco. We just announced our Vancouver studio. As you can see, there are 2 parts of the business. One is the platform, the GREE platform, and the second piece is the first-party studio. So I manage studio operations for GREE International. And amongst the studios that I support, responsible for the Midcore studio, which produces these RPG games, also responsible for card game studios like Zombie Zombie, that's the game we produced, and Casual Sim studios. Pretty soon we'll be announcing more studios, but don't have anything to share right now. So let me jump into the meat of the presentation here. I like to keep it simple. I want this to run just 20 minutes so I actually have time to take your questions, because that's very important that we actually have a real dialogue. This is just based on my experience now, starting 2 companies, social mobile gaming companies, being at a social network that transformed itself to a gaming portal, so I've kind of seen the platform side, and now being at GREE, where we are trying to achieve this collectively. They've dominated in Japan, but how can we do it globally? So these are my data points, but would love to have a discussion about it later. The very first thing I noticed, and this is sort of my findings through conversations, both doing these businesses, but as well as talking to a lot of independent game developers. One of the challenges that I find people have is they really are unable to transition from one platform to the other. They do not take time to really understand what's different about this platform, what are the nuances. Our industry today is littered with corpses of titles that have done really well on a particular platform, and then when they try to transition and bring that same game, same app to another platform, they miserably failed. There are very, very few standouts that have done it successfully. So one of the key takeaways for us is the kind of people and how you design your organization and build your organization, you really need to focus on who are the experts in that platform. And it is not based on vanity metrics. Stop approaching people who talk to you about downloads. We got 20 million downloads. We have 50 million downloads. Instead, talk to people who have built awesome games, games that you play, games that you enjoy, games that are actually in the top grossing charts. Because at the end of the day, this is a business. We love the creative aspect, but we also need to monetize, and we also need to make money. So I tend to look at industry leaders as folks who can dominate their top grossing charts, whether it's iOS, whether it's Facebook, or whether it's Android. At the same time, they can sustain it. The sustain part is also key. You don't want app developers, neither do we want to build games that get to the top 10 grossing and a week later, we are no longer there. And here, when you think about this, really start from the funnel. Again, I noticed like some developers do a really good job in retaining people, do a really good job in, I just don't know what happened there. So they do a really good job in retaining people. Also, but they forget that it's a user funnel. So you need to understand user acquisition. User acquisition on iOS is very different than user acquisition on Android and on Facebook. From there, you need to go to, okay, what is it that makes people retain on these apps? I review game developers who come to me, they're awesome apps, but it takes 30 seconds to load the game. Imagine bringing that kind of a game to Android. You'll just get destroyed. There's no chance of success. So really understanding platform nuances and platform and what makes each platform different is key to being successful. The other three things I have specific slides on, and we can go through them. One, of course, everybody talks about it, is having a data-driven development and data-driven game design. We refuse to launch a game that from day one is not instrumented properly, and I'll get into more details. The third piece is monetizing innovation. So we are all creative people, and we love to build games that are fun, that users enjoy, but at the end of the day, if you don't get paid, the business will not remain in existence. So we do need to build, we need to make sure that we can monetize our creativity. And the last piece is more around designing an organization around certain key goals, having the cadence by which we can launch products at a quality bar that none of our competitors can. So let me dive into each of these points. So the first one is really making sure that before you launch a game, you have a team in place that understands the metrics. You have a team in place that understands the entire user funnel. So it's a holistic problem. From the moment a player sees the ad for your app to the part where they actually end up getting monetized or leaving the app, you need to be able to keep a track of that. If you're a game developer that does not have this in place and you want to soft launch or you want to go worldwide launch, you're just setting yourself up for failure. And we experienced this firsthand at Funzio. When we launched Crime City on Facebook, we rushed it out because we thought that was competitive pressures. Someone else was going to copy this game and was about to launch a similar mafia game on Facebook. So we launched it without the analytics in place, and we paid the price for it. The game met with critical success, but unfortunately the game was not profitable long term. And we thought, well, notions with the engineering side was like, oh, we can run ad hoc queries, and we can tell you how the game's performing. Unfortunately, you really want systems in place that can give you the feedback, and it needs to be real-time feedback. The other thing is storage right now is cheap. And there are tons of solutions, and I tend to bucket KPIs, the key metrics, into two sections. One is heartbeat KPIs. By heartbeat KPIs, I mean KPIs that tell you the pulse of the game. These are metrics that are good for execs. What are your DAUs, your MAUs, how are your percent users, percent paying users tracking, which is great. But at the end of the day, you want to deep dive into action KPIs. And these are KPIs which tell you exactly what's happening in the game. Why are people buying certain kinds of items and not buying others? You really need to be able to respond to why and really understand why certain things are happening in your game. How fast are players progressing through the game? What is my revenue per level based on different cohorts? I acquire people from different channels, and how are users with each cohort performing? These are questions that you just can't slap on external party analytics tools and think that you can get answers to within 10 minutes, within an hour. That's the speed at which the organization needs to move in order to build compelling games and in order to retain users. And this last part is key. You will see speed is a common theme in my presentation, and it needs to be every organization needs to have the speed, whether it's marketing, whether it's engineering, whether it's game design, because we need to be able to react as this data comes real time to us. So even if you evaluate third-party tools, which I have done, they typically do a good job with heartbeat KPIs, but really fail at the action KPIs. And by action KPIs, I would focus on game analytics, like deep diving into the game, figuring out what's actually happening in the game. So again, my whole goal here is your takeaway should be, do not launch any game if you don't have this in place. Do not launch a game if you don't have a dedicated BI resource. Otherwise, you're just setting yourself up for failure. Now, there are always standouts and always one or two exceptions to the rule, but if you really want to have a success rate where you launch 6 games, all 6 are successful, all 6 are dominating the charts in terms of grossing and have great user feedback, this is what you need. And BI and user acquisition teams need to work very closely together because they have to close the loop. The next one is need for speed. And it's not just about, there are 2 things here that we want to focus on. One is at a macro level. What we are noticing is, and it depends on the genre, it's really hard to build franchises in mobile. And Crime City is a great example. There are other games like, for example, Dragon Veil is another great example where they've been able to build franchise and hopefully these games will go on for years and years. But most of the games, at least from my view, people will launch the game, they will climb up in the grossing charts, they'll climb up in the top free charts, and pretty soon, after a month or 2 months, they'll start declining. And that's the end. And one of the things is, of course, the App Store is geared in a way where it really has trained users to keep looking for the next new shiny object. And that's your battle. So at a macro level, what speed means is your organization needs to be in a cadence where after every 3 to 4 months, it does need to release new titles. And would you rather keep the user in your own network, or do you want to send those users out to your competitors? That's basically the choice that you have. So that's point 1. Point 2 is, within your existing game, if the game's metrics are looking good, you guys need to double down on that game. So this is what we do at GREE now, is as soon as we see the key metrics, that means the team needs to be staffed up. That means we probably have a franchise in our hands. That means we want to make sure that the game will last 2 to 3 years, at least on mobile. And in order to do that, we need fresh content. We need new features introduced on a monthly basis. And then, of course, you need to optimize based on the platform. If it's iOS, you need to figure out, okay, how do I refresh content nearly on a weekly basis? So in all our RPG games, we have limited edition items, 3 limited edition items every week. We have crates every week. We do new areas in our maps once a month or twice a month. And this is per game. So imagine now you have 3 games, so this is a scaling problem. Yet at the same time, it's a clear signal to the users, to the players, that, hey, listen, we are committed. If you keep investing in us, we are committed to investing back in this game. And that's what they go and tell people. And that's where they feel comfortable, where they can whip out their wallet and actually spend some money on the game. Because they know from the developer that this developer is going to invest in this game and it's going to be worthwhile. So it's really key to remember these 2 things. And I think people especially miss out why cadence is really important and why we need to move at a pretty rapid pace. This does not mean that you compromise on quality, by the way. This definitely does not mean that. So you have to figure out a way where your tech is still innovating, where your graphics are still innovating, where your game design is still innovating, yet you can move at this pace. And talking about innovation, this is a quote I actually saw at Mobile Beat from Bing Gordon. I think he's on the board of Zynga, which is, we're in the golden age of gaming, but we may not be in the golden age of gaming business. It's one that I talk about a lot, actually, within Funzio, and I talk to whenever I meet independent game developers. I see there is a slew of developers that I see who really focus on the creative aspect and bring out games that I can see from day one that, okay, this game's really going to delight the user. But what they miss sometimes is the business side. Okay, that's great. We figured out this creative aspect. You have some really cool ways to pan and swipe and move characters in your game, which is great, and it's very innovative. But then at the end of the day, have you been able to build a mousetrap that after you acquire those users, they actually will come back day after day, and then at the end of the day, they will end up monetizing. So innovation, just for the sake of innovation, is actually creative. That's the creative piece, that's just creativity. But in order to, if you can monetize that creative aspect, then you really have an innovative game. So I'll give you a few examples. One is, when we launched Crime City for the first time, people asked on Quora that has Crime City raised the bar for social gaming? That was an interesting question. And it was basically, what we had done is we had taken text-based RPGs and put them in a virtual world. And we had, at least in terms of tech innovation, in terms of graphics innovation, we had sort of delighted the user by saying, okay, it seems, at least to the market, that we have moved the boundaries there. The second thing was, some of our users on the App Store were writing, this is the first 3D Mafia game on iOS. The game's not 3D. But it doesn't matter. We didn't go with Unity. We didn't build a 3D game engine. What we did was we said, based on this cadence that we need to attack the market with, how can we come up with a solution where I'm not selling these games to folks like you, I'm selling it to the masses, where the masses feel the game is 3D. The masses feel that we've upped we pushed the boundaries of innovation, yet at the same time we have that mousetrap. And you can see there are certain examples today in the market where people are doing that. CSR Racing is actually a great example of that, where they've done an amazing job. Actually, when Dragon Veil came out, people thought that casual sims didn't have that tight monetization in it. But if you look at just the graphics, just the quality of the game, they just pushed the boundaries of casual sims right there. And at the end of the day, they were able to successfully monetize it. So don't fall in the trap of just being creative for the sake of being creative. Really figure out what is needed in order to build a AAA quality game for the market given the current conditions. Today, for example, if you launch another 2D ISO RPG, it just looks like another GREE game. There's not going to be much differentiation. So you really have to think about where you should focus, both in terms of technology, game design, graphics. This is the last piece that I have, which is really thinking through designing an organization that's focused on that cadence that we talked about, that realizes that innovation is important, yet at the same time we need to monetize innovation. And you cannot build this team unless you focus on people that are flexible and people that are open-minded. So a great example, again, at Funzio, when we were there, we launched on Facebook, and we were not commercially successful there. So we had to move that team and changed our focus to mobile. And it was awesome because the kind of people that we hired, they were like, great, we understand Flash, we love Flash, but at the same time, I'm going to learn Objective-C now, and I'm going to learn iOS development. And yes, I want to do it. So that is really, really important when we look who to hire. As long as you can figure out that you have a clear vision, and our vision was we wanted to be on multiple platforms, we wanted to be successful, and we wanted to make sure that when somebody asked you, what kind of company do you work in, you can whip out your iPhone or you can whip out your Android device and say, like, yeah, take a look. Here's the top 10 chart, and we have 2 games there. Or here's top 50, and we have 4 games in the top 50. That's the kind of organization that we want to build, where it's really fun to work, and we make games that are fun, that users enjoy, and that are commercially successful. The last piece is we have an inherent advantage as game designers and game developers, and that is it's so clear when a game is successful and when it's not. So it's really easy to actually empower your team. And so we tend to hire people who are very entrepreneurial, who want, at the end of the day, want to be able to do the same things outside of our current work, but they come to GREE and they come to Funzio in order to learn from us. And it's a great opportunity. So it's clear in the gaming business, here's the top line revenue goal, here's what it takes to be successful, go do it. That's how we empower people in the organization, and it's turned out to be pretty successful, actually. With that, a little plug. This is your opportunity to work with folks like me, and we are aggressively hiring both on the platform side and on the studio side. Would love to talk to you more about these opportunities. Cool. With that, I would like to open it up for questions. Yes.
You were talking a lot about business intelligence, and I certainly think it's extremely important in an organisation. How inside of GREE and Funzio do you split the responsibility of business intelligence?
Sorry?
From an organisation?
Yeah. Yeah. So the question is basically how do we organize the organization based on business intelligence? So we have dedicated resources for games. So in mobile, games go through different phases. The first phase is, so there's the pre-production phase, right, where business intelligence just works with the game developers to make sure that everything's getting instrumented. And we instrument the hell out of the game. Because we don't want, just given the nature of iOS, if you launch, then you have to, you forgot to instrument a few things, then you got to go back, you got to submit a binary, then you got to wait another 10 days. So that's really tough. So we try and instrument everything. So that's in the pre-production phase. And there's a dedicated analyst that will work on that. Number 2 is when the game goes into the marketing launch, that is what I call the burst. So that's like a 7-day, 10-day period where we have millions of dollars allocated to that launch. We have dedicated marketing folks, dedicated